Hi everyone, it's Syma here from Science of the Times. Just about to head over for lunch, and I've spotted my colleague, Professor David Pyle. David is a world-renowned volcanologist and has recently also become a Fellow of the Royal Society. Given the recent excitement we had at Mount Etna, I thought it'd be good to see if I can try and persuade him to do a 5-minute explainer on volcanic eruptions. Keep your fingers crossed, he says yes. Thank you, David.
Pleasure.
So, has it been exciting in the world of volcanoes in the last few days?
So Etna is definitely in a phase of enhanced activity. I think there's two things to say. One is it's a very big mountain. It's about 3,500 meters high. So it's a proper sized volcano. And it is very well monitored. So the Institute of Geophysics, Volcanology, our Italian colleagues have it well monitored from satellite, from ground, videos with webcams and so on. So Etna has been in an enhanced state of activity, certainly over the last...
So was this expected, the eruption?
So in fact, this particular eruption was not expected.
Right.
So the background, I suppose, is that the summit of Etna has a complex of 3 or 4 craters. Mm-hmm. The summit crater complex, and one of those craters is called the southeast crater, and then the others have different names, and they grow and change shape dramatically on timescales of years to decades. So the kind of the morphology of the summit today is very different from what it was 3 or 4 years ago.
Oh, wow. So by morphology you mean the outer shape,
actually,
right? So
the outer shape, what we can actually see. So what's happened over the last couple of years is that Etna has had some of its characteristic bursts of activity, which are called paroxysms.
Right.
And often with a paroxysm, there are signs that a kind of magma's moving, maybe a bit of deformation that they can see with satellites. Sometimes you can see precursor leaks of gas, but often it's the seismicity, the tiny earthquakes that you wouldn't feel, but the instruments can detect. So it's been in this spasmodic activity, and a paroxysm might be where it suddenly has fire fountains that last for a few hours.
Right.
And in the really big fire fountains, you can get volcanic ash, which might then be blown by the wind out over Catania or some of the nearby settlements or the larger towns and cities further away. So I suppose the key thing about this style of activity is that during the Strombolian activity, you build up what we'd call a cinder cone. So that's a kind of a rampart of debris.
This eruption is a Strombolian eruption, and there's lots of different types of eruptions.
That's exactly. So Strombolian, the name comes from Stromboli, and it's the classic red style of eruption. If you see a film footage with a kind of a conical vent, and streams of red hot material going up, and then some billowing ash clouds.
So it looks quite nice and spectacular.
Very spectacular.
Right.
So the activity at the moment is in the region called the southeast crater, and about 10 years ago, the southeast crater had quite a dramatic stage of activity where it grew, and as it was growing, it's basically growing too fast, and then there were parts of the crater were gravitationally unstable, and so in between eruptions, you'd have landslides inside the crater and puffs of reddish to brownish ash.
Right.
So what happened, I think was it yesterday morning, anyway, a couple of days ago,
Monday, I think,
was that the Institute knew that the seismicity was increasing, so they were expecting another Strombolian phase within the next couple of days. And then it began very dramatically with what was probably a landslide and a collapse of a part of the southeast cone. And basically, when you have hot rock and a landslide, it starts as a rock avalanche, but in fact the material becomes fragmented, and you then have this really dramatic, geologists call it a pyroclastic density current. It's basically a form of gravity current, where this granular material, which is hot, races down the side of the volcano for some hundreds of meters. And then as it runs over the bumpy surface or entrains cold air, the air is heated, and you get these turbulent and buoyant plumes of ash rising above them.
Right. Wow. And so, so erupts and stuff comes out. Does that have any kind of detrimental effect on the local environment?
So it's a really interesting question, because of course the entire landscape is dominated by the volcanic activity, and so in a way you have a really harsh environment. The top couple of thousand meters of Etna, most of the land surface is lava that's less than 100 years old, or granular, ground up volcanic ash. We call it kind of scoria, bits of rock debris that have been deposited in the last few decades. And of course there's ice and snow deposits.
Sure. So there's nothing, I guess, grow there or anything like that, I guess, right?
Not much. There are lichen that are clinging on in some places.
Right.
Local places you get little bits of vegetation which can just about hold on. So further down the slopes you get Etna broom, and you get kind of
Etna broom. What's
Etna.
that?
So broom is it's kind of a biologist. Like it's one of
Don't worry, we won't tell the biologists.
It's a woody shrub.
Right.
And it often has bright yellow flowers in summer, and in the UK you can see it in scrubland.
Sure. Okay, I see. So it's a name of the
plant
that grows near Etna.
Yes.
Okay.
And so the whole summit environment is really harsh, and what was gratifying. So there are obviously some photos of tourists who are doing a combination of watching this ash cloud, filming it, and running backwards. But it was quite good that they all seem to be wearing hard hats, which is very good.
And I guess if there was no warning for this particular one, then they wouldn't have been expecting this.
That's right. So I think that the as I say, Etna's such a large mountain that it's mandatory. I understand it's mandatory to hike with guides.
Yes, of course.
And obviously the guides are very experienced, and they'll just make judgment calls. But in fact, when you get very high up, and depending on the wind, the acid fumes from the steaming vents can be really, really challenging.
Yes, I bet. Well, thank you, David. That's absolutely fascinating and timely. So you know what I'm going to ask you next. You've explained to us about Etna, and it's been really interesting. Will you agree to come on a full podcast with us and tell us more about your own work?
Yes, certainly, of course.
Excellent, thank you. Really look forward to that. So thanks again for the explainer today. And we'll definitely tap you up for a full podcast episode.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thanks, folks. Cheers, bye.